Running the Boston Marathon is a dream for millions of runners, and for some, it becomes a reality. But yesterday, when runners and spectators were to celebrate and rejoice, that dream turned into quite a nightmare, as you know. But will it stop people from doing things, hurt businesses, tourism, our economy at large? Joining me now on the phone is Jayme, who finished the marathon just minutes before the bombs went off. And I just want to tell people as background, you are a West Point grad. You spent 15 months in Afghanistan. You ran this race, you went through the finish line, and then you heard the blast. What was your reaction? What was the scene like?
It was really chaotic. It was kind of really quiet, and everyone kind of knew that something just happened. And luckily, we linked up right after that with our family. And my boyfriend was like, "Hey, something just is going down. We need to get out of here." And we just wanted to get away, from that scene before. We saw cops running and everything, and we wanted to get out of there as soon as possible.
Did this bring back memories for you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you never imagine this stuff happening here in the States, and, I mean, it definitely brought back those memories from Afghanistan. So.
Marathoners are a resilient bunch, obviously, by definition. I mean, what it takes to train and get through a race. Are these the kind of people that can get through something like this kind of event, and come back to race again? What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, that was the one thing. The group even I was with, my boyfriend does marathon. The girl I was with, she finished right before or right with me, and her son is a runner. And I just think that, you have a mission, a task, and you're going to get it done. And I think everyone was kind of, hey, let's go, we got to keep walking. Even though you just ran 26 miles, we need to get out of here, and we need to, see what needs to get done. So I think marathon training has definitely, helped us out in this situation.
You obviously feel so blessed, I'm sure. You were so nearby, but you were so lucky. What was your first thought when you woke up this morning?
Thank God I'm alive, and thank God that we were all able to, connect, and, it was almost just a dream. I mean, I can't believe that happened yesterday. You're on such a high from finishing, and then for such a tragedy like that to occur, it's almost, I still can't believe that happened yesterday.
Jayme, you qualified for the marathon a couple years ago, but you finally got to run it yesterday. Did it change the experience for you, or are you going to try and do it again?
Oh, yes. I mean, the thing, Boston, it was such a great course, and it's such a well-organized race. I was so impressed with all the volunteers and all the other runners that all have stories to get into the Boston Marathon. And, I mean, I want to run Boston again for sure.
Good for you.
I think it's such an accomplishment, and, this is not going to change my opinion on marathons at all.
Good for you. Jayme, thanks for coming on, and we're glad you're safe.
Thank you.
So the biggest question about yesterday's attack is still, who did it? Was it foreign or domestic? And does that one fact have a different impact on our economy, on businesses, on your money? As of yet, no group is claiming responsibility, but the source of the attack changes the way we respond and we react to it. Here to explain, retired Colonel Cedric Leighton, a former National Security Agency officer, and Professor James Forrest, a terrorism expert at UMass Lowell. Thank you both for being here. Colonel Leighton, let me start with you. First of all, do you think that this was domestic or foreign terror?
Well, it's really hard to say right now, Melissa, but I would say that in looking at some of the ways in which the explosives were done, the placement of the explosives, and the target set leads me to believe that there's more of a 50% chance that it was a foreign terrorist, or at least someone associated with foreign terrorism. Now, could that change? Could my assessment change? Absolutely. But based on what I see right now, a lot of the way in which the explosives went off, all of that is very similar to what you see in Afghanistan and also Iraq. And those are the kinds of things that, as terms of terrorist signatures, that I look at and I think, well, this could very well be one of those situations where it is at least a foreign-inspired terrorist.
Professor Forrest, what difference does it make? I mean, I've thought about that all day as we've had people speculate one way or the other. What difference does it make for the future of security and how we respond, and for the economy at large, and what happens from here?
Well, it's a very good question, Melissa. I honestly don't think that it really matters whether it's international or domestic in terms of the response to the economy. I think what really matters is whether or not this is the beginning of a terrorist campaign, whether it's launched by an international group or a domestic group, or if it's just a one-off attack by an individual like an Anders Breivik or maybe an Eric Rudolph or something of that model, that's going to have a much less of a kind of an impact.
Right, absolutely. But Colonel Leighton, I mean, I think a lot of people feel like if it's a domestic terrorist, it's probably not the beginning of a campaign, where if it's foreign, it's probably the continuation of a campaign that we have been fighting so hard and maybe a resurgence of that. Is it wrong to think that way?
Not at all, Melissa. I think that's exactly right, because as the professor mentioned, there are so many attributes to a foreign campaign that would indicate that this perhaps could be the beginning of one of those. It may or may not be, but for a domestic person to do something like this, usually these are one-off acts, and they are not perpetuated by a further campaign. At least they haven't been so far, and I think that analysis is spot on in this case.
Yeah, Professor Forrest, I mean, I think a lot of people would feel like if this was a Timothy McVeigh or someone like that we would almost breathe a sigh of relief that maybe it was a one-off event of these people and not be as afraid going forward, as opposed to having Al-Qaeda have penetrated our borders and succeeded again.
Well, I agree with that, but I think the distinction between international and domestic gets a little blurred when we start talking about the homegrown terrorist phenomenon, where we have a domestic operative who's inspired by a foreign, in this case, a foreign terrorist network, and their inspiration to commit terrorist attacks is carried out by a lone individual here domestically, maybe living, maybe even has a U.S. residency, maybe even U.S. born.
Yeah, okay, that's a great point. So, Colonel Leighton, that person could operate bombs that look like what we're seeing here, right? A domestically grown terrorist who's inspired by foreigners?
Absolutely, and if he's looking at things like Inspire magazine or got training in the Middle East or Somalia, that is absolutely a trait that he would have, and it is very possible that a so-called homegrown terrorist could really be the product of education overseas, either by directly being there or by being inspired by the kinds of messages that the overseas terrorists have propagated, especially on the internet.
An important question. I hope you'll both come back as we get more clues to decode them. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure, Melissa. Thank you.